Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. For those of you who are watching me for the very first time, my name is James Ambroise, and on this channel we'll cover how to pay off debt faster than any other debt repayment method out there. We cover basic bookkeeping and accounting for someone who just started out a small business. We cover basic personal income tax to include a Schedule C, Schedule E, depreciation. I am also the author, creator of Ambroise Method 1.0 and Ambroise Method 2.0. Ambroise Method is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest cost compared to debt snowball, debt avalanche, velocity banking. Real quick about my credentials: I have been or am a bookkeeper and accountant, QuickBooks Pro advisor, senior tax advisor, residential real estate investor, residential property manager, financial coach. And as always, before we get started with what's on the board, please allow me to shout out the name Jesus, my Lord, my God, my Creator. Thank you. All right, America, on the board we have a scenario for a college student. Okay. He makes $50 an hour. He works 40 hours per week and he's on a bi-weekly pay period. Okay. His net income, so his take-home pay, so his income after tax, $2,000. His expense, $1,900, which give him a cash flow of $100. America, remember from prior lesson that cash flow is the relationship between the income and the expense. That relationship calls for a subtraction operation, so 2,000 minus 1,900. That's how we arrive at $100. Okay. Now he has a loan, a personal loan at 29%. He has a credit card at 17%. And he has a personal line of credit at 8%. And that personal line of credit is still in a draw period. Okay? All right. And on the board, we have a calendar. January 2025, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. And we're going to get to the calendar in a few minutes. Okay? Now, we're doing case study number 19th, and today's date is August 1, 2025. That is the day that I'm doing the video. Alright, America. There are still a few lessons that I need to cover. Okay? At least these lessons. We have paycheck allocations. And we have 3 different types of paycheck allocations for our method. We have debt consolidation or refinance. That's another lesson that I need to cover. Consolidation of due dates. That's another lesson. And 3 alternative accounts simultaneously. Okay? So these are some of the lessons that I haven't covered yet. At least these lessons. And today we're going to take care of this paycheck allocation today. Okay? Well, at least part of it. Alright, folks. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board real quick, and then we're going to start with the exercise. Alright, America. And like I mentioned earlier, we have paycheck allocations, and for our method, Ambroise Method, we have 3 different type of paychecks allocations. We have one that we refer to as basic. So basic paycheck allocation. We have another one we refer to as intermediate. Okay? And we have another one we refer to as advanced paycheck allocations. Okay? Today we're going to take care of basic paycheck allocation. Okay? So basic paycheck allocation, that is the one that I'm releasing to the general public. Okay, so that's the one that I'm teaching on YouTube. Intermediate and advanced paycheck allocations, these two, America, unfortunately, they are reserved for financial coaches. Okay, I do not teach these two on YouTube. Okay, but basic paycheck allocation, that one we're gonna cover today on YouTube. Okay, or on Facebook. All right, America. Now, again, we're doing a scenario for a college student. He makes 15 bucks an hour and he works 40 hours per week and he's on a bi-weekly pay period. Now, his net income is 2,000 bucks. Now, college student makes 15 bucks an hour, 40 hours per week, is on a bi-weekly pay period. So 15 bucks, is trying to figure out how we arrive at this 2,000 net income. So 15 bucks times 80 hours, because 40 hours per week, he gets paid every 2 weeks, okay? He's on a bi-weekly pay period. So 15 times 80, we are at 1,200 bucks. Okay, so his gross pay is 1,200. Okay, but his net income is 2,000 for the month. Okay, and we typically need 2 paychecks for our method, Ambroise Method. So if it's 2,000, let's assume everything is equal, which means he has 1,000 bucks per paycheck. Okay, paycheck number 1 for the month, 1,000 bucks. Paycheck number 2 for the month, 1,000 bucks. So that's how we have 2,000 bucks net income. Okay. So how did we go from 1,200 gross pay to 1,000 net? Okay. So these 2,000 represent 2 paychecks, 1,000 plus another 1,000, 2,000. Okay? So we know we have the FICA tax, which is comprised of, we have Social Security. Social Security is, the rate is at 6.2%. Okay. And there's a wage-based limit for Social Security. We're not going to get too much into payroll today. I'm just going to briefly touch on those things. We have Medicare tax. Medicare tax, America, the rate, it's 1.45%. Okay. Then we have the additional Medicare tax. This one is 0.9%. Okay. And college student is a single filer, so his the threshold for single filer is 200 grand. as of 2025. And we have federal income tax. Federal. Okay. And since we're freestyling with it, just so I could have an exact $1,000, because I want all these deductions to be about 200. So we're gonna put some kind of extra withholding. Okay, so on his W-4, when you fill out his W-4, which is the employee withholding certificate, okay, he's a single filer, so not only federal tax is being taken out, he also has a few bucks going earmarked for extra withholding. Okay. All right, folks. So now, $50 an hour times 80 hours for 2 weeks is 1,200. So his Social Security is 6.2%. So 1,200 times 6.2%. So for the Social Security portion, we are at 74.40. Okay. Medicare 1.45%, so 1,200 times 1.45%. We are at 1740. Okay. So these two combine, 7440 plus 1740, 9180. Okay. All right. So college student make about $50 an hour. Let's assume no overtime. So $15 times 80. So his gross income gonna be about over 30 some grand. So, he's below the threshold for the additional Medicare tax, so he's not gonna be required to pay the 0.9%. Because for a single filer, he has to make at least 200K. Okay. So his income gonna be way below 200K. Okay. So he's not gonna be responsible for this additional Medicare tax. Okay. And on his W-4, federal withholding got taken out, and he has an extra withholding being taken out the way he filled out his W-4. Okay. Because I want to have a nice $200, so we could have $1,000 per paycheck. So if this one is 9180, so 200 minus 9180, so we are at 10820. Okay. So between the federal withholding and the extra withholding and the Social Security portion and the Medicare portion all together, okay, the tax that's being taken out is $200. Okay, and again 9180 plus 10820. 0810 90 10 0 $200. Okay, folks? So his gross pay was $1,200, $1,200 minus 200 that goes to these items. 200, part of that 200 go to Social Security, Medicare, federal withholding, and this extra withholding. So altogether he has 200 taken out. So 1,200 minus the 200, that's how we'll have at $1,000, okay, per paycheck. Okay. And he has 2 paychecks for the month, $1,000 times 2. That's how we arrive at $2,000 net income. Okay. Let's assume in the state where college student is from, there's no state income tax and there's no local income tax. So we're only dealing with the federal portion. Okay. And we're just freestyling with it. That's how we arrive at $200, for deductions. Okay. Out of the gross pay. So 1,200 minus 200, $1,000 net income. Okay, times 2 paychecks, $2,000. All right, folks. That's how we arrive at this 2,000. Now, on the board, like I mentioned earlier, we have January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So we're doing, this is January of 2025. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay. Let's assume college students started work, started this new job on Sunday, January 5. Okay? And the first day for the pay period is also Sunday, January 5. Okay? Again, folks, it's on a bi-weekly pay period. We're trying to figure this thing out because I know a lot of folks need that kind of knowledge. That's why I'm spending a little time on it. Okay? Again, today we're doing paycheck allocation, so that's why I'm covering a little bit about paycheck. Okay? So, Sunday, January 5. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, from Sunday through Saturday, that's one work week. Okay? But he doesn't get paid weekly, he gets paid bi-weekly. Okay, so every 2 weeks. So Sunday again, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 2 weeks. Okay? So between his pay period, we'll cover the January 5 through January 18. Okay, folks? And again, let's count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay? So between January 5 and January 18th, okay, that's his pay period. Okay, folks? Now, he does not get paid on January 18th. Most of the employers, you get paid a few days later, okay, after the pay period. This particular employer, pay date is on January 24th. So the following Friday. Okay? The pay period covers this period, 5 through 18, but the actual paycheck or the actual pay date won't be until the following Friday. Okay? January 24th. So Pay date, pay period, January 5 through January 18th, but pay date, January 24th is the pay date. That is the day that he gets paid. Okay? Now, there is something in America called early direct deposit. Early direct deposit in America, that's when for lack of a better term, the bank where your direct deposit where your money get deposited to. Okay. Some bank make these pay checks available a day or two earlier. So instead of getting paid January 24th, if the bank participate in some form of early direct deposit, so college student might get paid on the 23rd, which is a day earlier, or on the 22nd, which is 2 days earlier. So if the bank participates in early direct deposit, you'll be a day or two earlier. Okay? So you back it up by 1 day, you back it up by 2 days. Okay? If they participate. But the actual pay date is every 2 weeks and on a Friday. Okay? Because it's on a bi-weekly pay period. Okay, folks? So it's good if you find a bank that participates in some form of early direct deposit. Because remember, when you're paying off debt, America, the earlier that you could get the income, the better. Okay? Especially in a case where you're going to be using alternative accounts. Okay? Even when you're not using alternative account, the earlier you could get the money in, the better. Because remember, some of these accounts, okay, these trade lines, okay, in the case of the personal loan, 29%, credit card 17%, PLOC 8%, okay, especially in the credit card and the PLOC. They use, most of these lenders, they use an average daily balance, including new transactions with compounding. So the earlier you could get the paycheck in, so you're gonna reduce the average daily balance. So you could find a bank that participates in early direct deposit. Okay, that's a good thing, because the paycheck would touch down the account sooner, your regular checking account, then you could send it to one of these trade lines, okay, especially the ones where the average daily balance that uses an average daily balance, because again you want to reduce your average daily balance. Okay, so the earlier the better. Okay, all right, folks, now to recap, $15 an hour, 40 hours per week, but it gets paid every 2 weeks. So $15 an hour times 80 hours for 2 weeks is 1,200. That's his gross pay. Okay. We wanted to have a net pay of $1,000 per paycheck. So we need to reduce this $1,200 by $200. And since we're freestyling with it, we know that the Social Security portion is 6.2%. Up to a base limit. We know the Medicare is 1.45%. Well, this one doesn't have no base limit. Okay, so this one is on all your income. There's an additional Medicare tax, but college student is a single filer, so he's not gonna have to worry about the 0.9% because his income gonna be below the threshold, 200K for single filer. He's gonna make a lot less than 200,000, so he's not gonna be required to pay this 0.9% additional Medicare. Okay? Now, we're freestyling with it, Social Security portion plus the Medicare portion. we are at total, we are 91.80. Remember, we're trying to get to 200 bucks. So 91.80 minus 200 bucks, so we are at 108.20. So 108.20 represents the federal withholding portion plus the extra withholding. Okay? And again, folks, we're trying to freestyle with it so we could arrive at an exact 200 bucks. Okay? That way our paycheck will be $1,000. Okay, so 1,200 minus 200, which is Social Security portion, Medicare portion, federal withholding portion, and the extra withholding. So that's how we arrive at 200. So 1,200 gross pay minus 200 for all those taxes. Okay, and we're staying at the federal level. We're not going to include state income tax or local income tax to keep our little scenario sampler. Okay, so 1,200 gross pay minus 200 bucks for all these items. So his net pay gonna be $1,000 bucks. Okay. For our method, Ambroise method, we typically need 2 paychecks. Okay, to take care of our bills, of our expenses. So 1,000 times 2 is 2,000. So his net income is 2,000. Okay. All right, folks. Now let's go over the calendar. This past January, the very first day in January was on a Wednesday. Okay. So, and again, we did say that on the first day of the pay period was January 5. So January 5 through January 18th, that's 14 days right there. Okay. So that is the pay period. So he works during these times, but he doesn't get paid for those days until January 24th. Okay? Which is the following Friday. Those are the days that he worked. This one, that one, that one. Okay? So 14 days, but he doesn't get paid until January 24th, the following Friday. Okay? He gets paid for those days on January 24th. All right? Now, let's cover February. Since he gets paid on a Friday, and he gets paid every 2 weeks, okay? My board is too small, America, so I just summarize. So I'm only concerned about the Fridays, okay? So for February, we have Friday 7, Friday 14, Friday 21, Friday 28. March, we have Friday 7, 14, 21, 28. These are only for the Fridays, okay? April, Friday 4th, 11, 18, 25. May, Friday is the 2nd, 9, 16, 23, 30th. June, that Friday will be, the first Friday will be the 6th, 13th, 20th, 27th. July, only the Fridays that I'm concerned about because he gets paid on Friday. Again, I don't want to put an entire calendar on the board. Okay, my board is too small, America. Okay, so July, these are the Fridays. August, these are the Fridays. September, these are the Fridays. October, these are the Fridays. November, these are the Fridays. December, these are the Fridays. Okay, so only Fridays that we have on the board. For January, I have everything, but for every other month, I only put down Friday's date. Okay. All right. Now he gets paid every Friday. He's on a bi-weekly pay period. So his first paycheck, because he started work on January 5. First paycheck was on January 24. Okay. So his next paycheck gonna be, remember, he gets paid every 2 weeks. So his next paycheck gonna be 1 Friday, 2 Fridays. Okay. The next one, 1 Friday, 2 Fridays. The next one, 1 Friday, 2 Fridays. The next paycheck after that, 1 Friday, 2 Fridays. The next paycheck after that, 1 Friday, 2 Fridays. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay? These are the pay dates. Okay? So every other Friday, every 2 weeks. Okay? Alright, folks? Now, America, let's count them. Because there's a big misconceptions out there that if you're on a bi-weekly pay period, you have 26 bi-weekly paychecks. So now let's count them, America. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So he's going to have 25 bi-weekly paychecks. Again, let's count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Why I wanted to bring this to you guys' attention is that if you go online and you're trying to find articles about how many bi-weekly paycheck that we have in a calendar year, okay? It's gonna show 26 paycheck. When you do a Google search or whatever search, most of them or all of them show that you have 26 paychecks per calendar year. Well, I just counted 25 paychecks. I don't have 26 paychecks. And how they arrive at this 26 number, we know we have 52 weeks in a year, so 52 divided by 2, since these persons get paid not every week but every 2 weeks. That's how they arrive at this 26 paychecks. Okay? So all these guys writing on social media, all of them, they're all regurgitating this nonsense that we have 26 paychecks per calendar year. Well, I just counted 25, not 26. So depends when somebody started the new job, or depends when the pay date is. You might have 26 paychecks, okay? But it's not always 26 paychecks, America. And then I just counted them. I arrived at 25, not 26. Because these people who are writing on social media, they fail to realize that for somebody who's on a bi-weekly pay period, depends when, okay, the first paycheck is for the calendar year. Because remember, for most of these employers, you work the two week pay period first, but you don't get paid until the following Friday. Some of them, it's not Friday for them. It could be any days. It could be like on a Wednesday or something, But you don't get paid right away, right after the pay period, or on the pay period, because most of these employers, they need a little bit of time to process payroll. Okay, so that's why it's the following, whatever day, but that follows the end of the pay period. Okay. So for January, for someone who started work on January 5, and their first pay date was on January 24th, well, that's only one paycheck for this month. You see that, America? His first paycheck is not until January 24th, towards the end, almost towards the end of the month, of that month. So it depends when you get paid. You might have 26 paychecks, or you might have less than 26 paychecks. Okay? It all depends when you get paid, America. Okay? Don't run your numbers based on the fact that you think you might have 26 paychecks. Okay? So he only started work in January 5, only 5 days later. Okay? So that's in the beginning of the year, beginning of January. And he still doesn't have 26 paychecks. He only has 25 paychecks. Okay? And again, we're in the year 2025. Today is August 1, so we're right here now. Okay? So he's projecting to have 25 paychecks for the entire calendar year, not 26 paychecks. Okay? America, over at Ambroise Method, we are the shepherd in the flock. Who are the flocks? The regular Janes, regular Joes. That's why I wanted to bring this to you guys' attention. Okay? All these people writing on social media, these people are supposed to be personal finance gurus. Personal finance gurus. Okay? But they are being lazy. Okay? They're not taking into account when somebody started work and when the actual pay date is. So that's why they're putting out this nonsense that for somebody who's on a bi-weekly pay period, you're going to have 26 paychecks. No. It's not 26 paychecks, folks. And we just counted them. For somebody who started work on January 5, gets paid first paycheck on January 24th, they're going to have up to 25 paychecks for the calendar year, not 26. Okay, folks? So hopefully some of these people, they'll get a hold of this video. That way they start tapping this nonsense on social media that you always have 26 paychecks if you're on a bi-weekly pay period. No, it's not always 26 paychecks, folks. And we just proved that here. Okay? All right, America. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board, and then we're going to continue with the exercise. All right, America. Now, let's start erasing some stuff from the board. Let's start erasing from here. Let me leave this one for now. Now, let's see. All right. So in January, only one paycheck. February, 2 paychecks. Okay. For our method, Ambroise Method, we typically earmark 2 paychecks to cover the bills, the expenses. Okay. So this one has 2, so that's perfect. This one has 2, that's perfect. This month has 2. This month has 3. Again, January has 1. Because of when he started work and when the first day of the pay period was. February has 2 paychecks, March 2, April 2, May has 3. June 2, July 2, August 2 paychecks, September 2 paychecks, October has 3. So this one has 3, that one has 3. November has 2, December has 2. Now, again, for our method, we typically dedicated 2 paychecks to cover the bills, the expenses. Well, James, so what then do we do when we only have 1 paycheck? Okay. Remember, his net income was $2,000, so which was $1,000 per paycheck. So, January, let's assume he didn't do any overtime, so that's only 1 paycheck total. That's $1,000. But he needs 1,900. I'm sorry. His expenses were 1,900. So he's not gonna have enough to cover his expenses. Okay. February, 2 paychecks. Okay, $1,000 per paycheck. So that's $2,000. So he's fine there, because his net income. His income gonna be bigger than his expenses. That's why he might have a cash flow of $100. Okay. March is good. April is good. May, he has more than enough. May, he has 1 paycheck, 2 paycheck, 3 paychecks. So that's $3,000. So that's 2,000 plus an additional 1,000. 2 paychecks, 2,000. An additional paycheck, that's another 1,000. Okay. 2 paycheck for June is good. July is good. August, 2 paycheck is good. September, 2 paycheck is good. October, 1, 2, 3 paychecks. Okay. That's $3,000. So he has the 2 paycheck that he needs to cover his bill, his expenses. Then he's gonna have an additional paycheck for $1,000. Because remember, each paycheck is $1,000. Okay. November, he's good, only have 2. December, he's good, he has 2. Okay. So January, he only has 1 paycheck, America. So he's gonna be short. There will be a shortage for January. Okay. His expenses 1,900, 1,900, but his paycheck or his income is only $1,000. So he only has 1 paycheck for January. Okay. So he's short. There is a shortage. I'm gonna create a little problem. Okay. So now, what then do we do when we have a shortage? Okay. So college student in this example gonna continue to do what he's been doing. Okay. Before he had the job. Before he had the job, how was he able to pay his bills? Okay. He's gonna continue to do what he's been doing before he got the job. Before he got the job, he either A, was using funds from his own checking or savings account to cover his expenses. Okay. So when he's short, he's gonna continue to do that. Okay. Or he's gonna borrow money from friends and family to cover his expenses. Okay. So he's gonna use his savings to cover the shortage. So that's when he's short now. Okay. He's going to continue to do what he's been doing before he got the job. So borrow from friends and family. Okay. Or he's going to use availability that he has from these accounts. Remember, he has a personal loan, a credit card, and a personal line of credit. Okay, that is still in the draw period. Okay. So on the personal loan, you cannot use funds that you have in that account. On a credit card, if he has availability from the credit card, then he could use, and these bills, these expenses could go on a credit card, then he could use funds from the credit card, availability from the credit card to cover the shortage. Okay. Or he could use availability from the personal line of credit to cover the shortage. Okay. So availability, so available funds from the credit card, available funds from the PLOC to cover the shortage. Or it could be a combination of all these things. You could do a little bit of availability from the PLOC, and he could get a little bit from his savings. Because remember, his expenses is 1,900, so he's gonna be short $900. Okay. So he could use any of these items, or he could do a combination of those items. Okay. Let's say his savings, because all he needs is $500, $900, because that's what he's short. His income gonna be $1,000, but his expense is 1,900. Okay. So if he has 900 in his savings or more, he could use that to cover the shortage. If in the past, the way he was able to pay his bill was to borrow from friends and family, well, that's where he's going to get that 900 from. Because remember, he didn't have a job before. So whatever he was doing to cover his bills, his expenses, that's what he's going to continue to do, you know, at a much lower rate, because at least now he got $1,000 coming in, okay? Or he could get availability from the credit card, about $900. If these bills, these expenses could go on a credit card, or he could get that $900 shortage from his PLOC if he has that much available, okay? He could use any of these items, or he could do a combination of those items. Say he wants to grab 700 from the savings and 200 somewhere else, okay? That's how it's gonna cover the $900 shortage, okay? That's when he's short. Again, folks, to recap, when you are short, you're gonna do whatever you've been doing before you got a job. How was he able to pay his expenses before he got that job? Was he borrowing money from friends and family? Did he have to go through his savings? Did he have to use available funds from his credit card if he has availability? Because remember, these are the three trade lines, traditional trade line that he has. Then he has to use funds from the PLOC, okay, to cover the shortage, okay. So whatever he was doing before, that's what he's gonna continue to do, but at a much lower rate, because now at least he got $1,000 coming in, okay. Or he could do a combination of all that he's been doing, combination of those things. So he could make up for that $900 shortage. And again, his expense is $1,900. His income after tax, his take-home pay only gonna be $1,000. Okay, folks? So that's for the shortage. So now, how about when he has not one paycheck but two paychecks? Okay. Again, America, for our method, Ambroise Method, we typically want two paychecks to cover the bills, the expenses. Well, when he has two paychecks, that's perfect. Remember, it's $1,000 per paycheck. He has two. That's $2,000. Okay. So he has more than enough to cover his expenses. His expenses is only $1,900. Okay. So there's going to be a little bit of overage of $100, which is his cash flow. Okay. So he's okay there. Okay. Two, he's okay there. Two, he's okay there. Three. Okay. So now, America, what happens then when he has three paychecks? So now he has more than enough. Okay. He has an additional paychecks to play with, to do whatever he wants. Okay. This time we're going to be dealing with what happened when you have an extra paycheck. Okay. Again, folks, today we're doing paycheck allocations or paycheck distributions or paycheck assignments. What do we do when we have a shortage? What do we do when we have the right amount of paychecks? What do we do when we have an extra paychecks? Again, today we're doing basic paycheck allocation. When using Ambroise Method. Okay? And we have an intermediate, and we're at an advanced. These are more advanced type paycheck allocation, and I only reserve the remainder two only for financial coaches. Okay? Now, we I've already covered when you have a shortage. We've already covered when you have the right amount. Let's put the right number of paychecks. And now we're going to cover what happened when we have an extra paycheck. Just like we had an extra paycheck in May, we have 3. And we have an extra paycheck in October, we have 3. Okay, we only need 2, but we have 3. We only need 2, but we have 3. Okay? Now, with the extra paychecks, how do we deal with the extra paychecks when using Ambroise Method? Okay. America, remember that part of the steps on our method is segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Okay, and we stay above the line for as long as we can before we go downstairs, before we go below the line. And below the line, we're dealing with cash flow or large payment, and then we have to insert the what? W-H-T. W, which account or accounts to use. H, how much of a payment to send to this account. And T, to pay down or off which debt or which account. Okay. Again, folks, these are the steps for Ambroise Method. And those steps have to be taken at least once a month. Okay. Now, again, we're going to be dealing with the extra paycheck. When we have an extra paycheck, America, just like we have for the month of May, we have 3 paychecks, so that's an extra one for somebody who was on a bi-weekly pay period. Okay. Why bi-weekly? Again, folks, the bi-weekly is the most utilized one. Okay, as of right now, August 1, 2025. Most employers, they prefer to use the bi-weekly pay period. That's why, and most of our examples, we're trying to concentrate on the bi-weekly pay period because that's what most employer uses. Not all, but most. Okay. Now, the extra paycheck, how do we allocate the extra paycheck? How do we distribute the extra paycheck? Where do we assign the extra paycheck? Okay. America, when we're dealing with the extra paycheck, okay, you could choose to be any of those 3 things. And what are they? You could decide to be aggressive, remember, it's an extra paycheck. You could do whatever you want to do with it. You could decide to go for greater liquidity, or you could decide to do some form of mix and match. Okay, folks? And again, we're dealing with the extra paycheck. Okay? For somebody with a bi-weekly pay period, the 3rd paycheck. Okay? Now, going back to our steps again, segregate, compare, transfer, repeat. Cash flow or large payment, then we have to insert the what? WHT. W, which account or accounts to use. H, how much of a payment to send to this account. And T, to pay down or off which debt. Okay? America, sometimes in the middle of paying off debt, you might come across a bonus check from work. You might come across some income tax refund. You might come across additional funds or money that would constitute or represent a large payment. Okay? So we're going to treat this extra paycheck as a large payment for our method as part of our steps. And again, in the middle of paying off debt, we come across an extra paycheck, which is that we treat as a large payment. So for May, we're going to have a large payment. For October, we're going to have another large payment. Because that's how we're going to treat the extra paycheck as part of our steps for Ambroise Method. Okay, folks? So now that we're treating it as a large payment, that we receive in the middle of paying off debt. And again, how do we allocate it? Okay? If we want to be aggressive, we're going to treat it as a large payment, and we're going to send it, because remember, and again, it's an extra paycheck. We could do whatever we want to do with it. We could send it to the higher APR account. And the higher APR account that we have on the board, we have this loan 29%, the credit card 17%, the PLOC 8%. Okay? So this one will go to the higher APR account. Okay? The higher APR account, America, 99% of the time will yield the highest interest cost. Not always, but the higher APR account generally produce the higher interest cost. Okay? Not always, but 99% of the time. On my next lesson, America, I'll do an example. I briefly touched on that in the past in one of our case studies. But my next lesson was going to be lesson number 20. I'm going to go into greater details and make the distinctions when a higher APR does not translate to higher interest cost. Okay? That'll be on the next lesson. Okay? That way you guys have a better idea what I'm talking about when I say that the higher APR does not always translate to higher interest cost. Okay? We're going to cover that, I believe, on my next lesson. So, if you want to be aggressive with the extra paycheck, you're going to send it to the higher APR account, the higher APR debt. In this case, that'll be the personal loan. Now, when we have internal knowledge that the higher APR does not translate to higher interest cost, then in that case, we'll send it instead to the higher interest cost account. As you can see, America, this paying of debt is very complex. That is why sometimes I pity the folks over at Debt Snowball Group talking about the way you paying off debt is to attack the lowest balance. And in the case of debt avalanche, the way you paying off debt is to attack the higher APR. Okay? Look at all the moving parts, man. This thing is very complex, folks. First, we have to know how those lenders or those creditors compute interest cost. Okay? You can't just go blindly and start attacking accounts. Again, folks, simplicity is not going to get the job done. Okay? The simplicity of just attacking the lowest balance account in the case of debt snowball, the simplicity of just attacking the higher APR account in the case of debt avalanche. No, simplicity is not going to get the job done, folks. This thing is too complex, man, to be used in the so-called grab and go method to pay off debt. So, higher APR, when the higher APR doesn't translate to higher interest cost, then you go for the higher interest cost instead. And sometimes on our method, we're doing something that's called event priority. So it's going to go to the event priority account. Okay. Folks, if you guys doesn't know what I'm talking about, I cover all these items extensively, especially this event priority on our past lesson, past case studies. So go back and watch these past lessons, these past case studies. Okay. Now, going back to our example again, if you want to be aggressive, the extra paycheck is going to go to the personal loan, okay, which is the higher APR account. Okay. If the higher APR account does not translate to higher interest costs, then we're going to attack whichever account, okay, produces highest interest cost. Because remember, we're trying to reduce our overall interest cost. Okay. And sometimes, okay, depends what we're trying to accomplish. We might be attacking an account that is not the higher APR account, that is not the higher interest cost account. We refer to this type of scenario sometimes as event priority. Okay. Now, remember the extra paycheck was $1,000. Okay. So we're gonna attempt to attack the higher APR ones first. Okay. Let's assume the higher APR is also a higher interest cost. So it's gonna be the personal loan. Okay. Now, if we have any excess, because remember the third paycheck is $1,000. Let's say on the personal loan, the remaining balance was, let's just say $5,000. So in that case, we're gonna send the entire $1,000 to the personal loan. Okay? Because the remaining balance on the personal loan is greater than the paycheck. But let's assume the remaining balance on the personal loan was only $600. Okay? Not taking into account whatever trailing interest, okay, that we may have. So if the remaining balance was only 600, so remember we have 1,000. Okay? So we're still gonna have an additional 400 left. So in this case, if we have any excess after we attack the higher APR account or the higher interest cost account, if we have any excess, then the excess is gonna go to the next highest APR account or the next highest interest cost account. In this case, that'll be the credit card. Okay, so we have 1,000. If this one is only 600, so we'll send, not taking into account any trailing interest, then we'll send the 400 over here, because the credit card has the next highest APR. The loan is 29, the credit card is 17. Okay? All right, folks? That's if the balance in the personal loan was, the remaining balance was lower than $1,000. Okay? Not taking into account any trailing interest like I mentioned earlier. Okay? So that is for someone who wants to be aggressive with that extra paycheck. Okay? Now, if you're looking for greater liquidity instead, you don't want to be aggressive, you just want greater liquidity. Okay? Greater liquidity to cover whatever emergency you may have in the future. So to cover emergencies. Or to cover any future shortage. Okay? So, if you're looking for greater liquidity, then in that case, which account on the board offer greater liquidity? We have a loan, we have a credit card offer liquidity, and we have a PLOC. PLOC offer liquidity. So between the credit card and the PLOC that is still in the draw period, the PLOC offers greater liquidity. Okay? Because remember, on a credit card, a lot of times you cannot pay all bills or expenses with a credit card, but with a PLOC, you could pay all your bills, all your expenses in a way through a PLOC. Okay? Let's assume this PLOC doesn't have any restrictions, because some of them have some restrictions. Okay? So if you're looking for greater liquidity, then you're going to send this extra paycheck to the PLOC. Okay? Why? Because the PLOC is charging you interest, 8%. Let's assume this college student did not have a PLOC. All he had was a loan and a credit card. So in that case, you'll send it to your regular checking account. Or your regular savings accounts. Okay, folks, because remember, you want greater liquidity. You want to be able, okay, to use the money if you have some kind of emergency coming up, or if you have a future shortage, just like we had over here. In January, we only had one paycheck. Or somebody got sick or something to where you need some extra money. Okay? So which means now your expense is going to balloon up. Okay? It's not going to be 1,900 because you just had some extra, an emergency. Okay? So then you could use the money that you've been setting aside in a PLOC, or you've been setting aside in your checking account or savings account. Okay? To cover the shortage. All right, America? Now, this checking account, it could be the same checking account that you have your direct deposit going in. Okay? Or it could be a totally separate checking account. Okay? Not the checking account that you normally use to have your direct deposit coming in. It could be a separate account. Okay? Or it could be a separate savings account. Could be the same, or it could be a different checking account. Okay? Could be the same, or it could be a different savings account. Doesn't have to be the same. Okay? For somebody who do not want to mix the paycheck that comes into their regular checking or savings account because they don't want to get confused, then for someone who does not want to get confused, they could use a different checking account or different savings accounts. Okay? It depends on how comfortable you are with those things. Okay? You don't want to mix them up Okay, just put them in a separate checking or separate savings. Okay, this extra paycheck that will be earmarked for emergencies or future shortages. Okay, somebody you got sick or someone is sick or someone asked you to borrow money, then you could go to that account because remember you keep dumping $1,000 into it for how many times that you have extra paychecks. Okay, and again, we're only dealing with the extra paychecks for. Okay, you could choose to be aggressive. In that case, you go for the higher APR or higher interest cost. Because sometimes the higher APR doesn't translate to higher interest cost. Or you could go for the even priority account. Okay, folks? Greater liquidity. Okay. If you're looking to put money away in case you have an emergency or for future shortage, so in that case you send in a P-lock. Because inside the P-lock, you could use it and reuse it. Okay? You could easily move the money from the P-lock to cover whatever future emergency you're going to have or future shortages you're going to have. Okay? While you look for the P-lock first, the P-lock they're charging you interest, 8%. On the checking account or savings accounts, you're probably earning 0%. Let's say you got lucky, you're earning 2%. Okay? In the P-lock, E-lock, for each payment made, you're saving at least 8% before any movements. So I could save 8%. Okay? Remember, they're charging you 8%. So for each dollar borrowed, they're charging you 8%. The reverse is also true, America. For each payment made, we're saving 8% before any movement. So I could be saving 8% over here in the P-lock when I make a payment. Because they charge me 8, which means I'm saving 8 when I make a payment before any movement. And on checking or savings, I'm earning 0 to 2. Okay? So 8 is a bigger number, is a greater savings than 0 to 2%. That is why we look for the P-lock first. Okay? If we do, that is still in a draw period now. He has to be in a draw period. Because if it's in a repayment period, remember, we can now use it and reuse it for that emergency if it's in a repayment period. He has to be in a draw period, okay, folks? And there has to still be some draw period left, okay? Because remember, this emergency is going to come in the future. The short is going to come in the future, okay? So that is why we look, and again, 8% is bigger than 0%, 8% is bigger than 2%. Okay, so that is why we look for the P-lock first. Okay, if college student did not have a P-lock that's in the draw period, then in that case, you're looking for greater liquidity, you'll put in the checking account or your savings account. Okay. Now, with regards to the extra paycheck, we have one more that we refer to as mix and match, for lack of a better term, America. This is mix and match. That is when you could decide to be aggressive. Some month when the extra paycheck comes in, you decide to be aggressive with it. Let's say in the same calendar year, you have an additional one coming in. For the additional one, you could decide for greater liquidity. Okay. Another time you want to do a little bit of both. Okay. When you want to be aggressive, you send the entire paycheck to, since the loan in this example has the higher APR, you want to send the entire paycheck to the loan. So let's say in May, I decide to be aggressive in May, okay, in the month of May. Okay. I want to be in a mix and match category. So in October, I have an additional paycheck again. And again, we're only dealing with the extra paychecks, folks. Okay. So in October, you decide to look for greater liquidity. In this case, you'll be the P-lock. That's in October. Okay. So in May, I send the entire 1,000 to the personal loan. Okay. In October, I might decide to send the whole $1,000 to the P-lock. So I just want to mix and match. Okay. Or I could do a combination. Okay. In May, I could do some form of split to where I send 50% to the loan. I could do a split 50-50. 50% to the loan, 50% to the P-lock. Okay, so 50% to the ones, if I want to be aggressive, then 50% to the greater liquidity one. So that's in May. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be 80-20, 70-30, 60-40, okay? Whatever, percentage you think you should do. So you're sending a little bit to this one, you're sending a little bit to that one, okay? And in October, I could do, let's say I decide to do 60-40. Okay? So it's $1,000 for this one, 500, 500. So it's $1,000. Remember, the extra paycheck is $1,000. This one, 600, 400. Okay? We send 600 to the personal loan, 400 to the P-lock in case I have an emergency or in case I have a future shortage. Okay? And again, folks, you find out what type of users that you are, and then you pick one. We have aggressive, you're trying to go for the standard, which is to attack the highest interest cost they can. Because that's why they're killing you on the highest interest cost. Because your goal is to reduce your interest cost. Okay? If you want to set money aside for emergency or future shortage, then you look for the greater liquidity account. Okay? A P-lock, they usually charge you interest that is much greater than what you're earning, if any, on your checking account or a savings account. So you look for the P-lock first if you have a P-lock. Okay? College student has a P-lock. Okay? But if you do not have a P-lock, then for greater liquidity, they'll look for is to set the money aside in to put the money away into his checking account or into his savings account. Okay? And we have mix and match, which is another type. That's when you decide to mix things up. 1 month, when you have extra paycheck, you might decide to be aggressive. And another month, when you have extra paycheck, you might decide to look for greater liquidity. Or you could do a combination of both. A little bit to the account with the higher APR, and a little bit to the account that will offer me greater liquidity. So we refer to that one as mix and match. Okay, folks? And again, it's an extra paycheck. You do with it whatever you want. based on your style, based on the type of user you are, based on what you think you're going to need. Okay, if you think an emergency gonna be coming up, okay, well, you have to be that one. Okay, or if you just want to be aggressive, then you attack the higher APR ones. Okay, if you are unsure, then you could do a little bit of each. Okay, and you decide what type of percentage you need to apply towards each, whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 90-10, 70-30. And again, folks, it's an extra paycheck. You do with it whatever you want, okay, based on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, I cannot tell you to be aggressive. I cannot tell you to look for greater liquidity. I cannot tell you to fall under this mix and match category. Okay, because different people have different needs, I guess. Okay, folks. All right, America. I'll give you about 5-10 seconds to take a look at what's on the board, and then we're going to continue with the exercise. All right, folks, quickly in a review. Okay, today's lessons was about paycheck allocations. Paycheck allocation. On our method, we have 3 different type of paycheck allocations. We have what we refer to as basic paycheck allocations. This one, I release it to the general public on YouTube and Facebook. Okay. We have what we refer to as intermediate paycheck allocation. This one is reserved for financial coaches. And we have what we refer to as advanced paycheck allocation. That one is also reserved for financial coaches. Okay. These are more advanced type item, folks. Okay. Now, basic allocation, paycheck allocation, that's for the general public. You're always trying to figure out how many paychecks that you have for the calendar year. Sometimes you might have 26 paychecks. Sometimes you might have less than 26 paychecks. Depends when you started work. Okay. Now, what we do when we are short. So when we have less money to cover our bills or expenses. Okay. College student gonna do exactly what he's been doing before he get that job. Okay. He's gonna look to cover the shortage from funds from his savings account, from friends and family, if that's what he's been doing, or availability from his trade lines. On the personal loan, you cannot use, there's no availability. That don't apply. On the credit card, you might have some funds available on the credit card. Okay? Your credit limit is X, but your balance is a lot lower than that X. So you could use the availability from your credit card. Same thing on the PLOC, that is no draw period, you could use the availability. Or you could do a combination of those things, because remember in January, you only had one paycheck. Okay? Each paycheck is $1,000, but his expenses was $1,900, so it's gonna be short by $900. Okay? So if we go into his account, okay, if he has enough in a savings account, that will cover the shortage. If he used to borrow funds from friends and family, that will cover the shortage. If he has availability from the credit card or PLOC, that will cover the shortage. Or he could do a combination of those things. Get a little bit from here, get a little bit from there in order to arrive at this $900 shortage. Okay? Whether it's from one place or a combination of places, that's how it's going to cover the shortage. Okay? So that's when we are short. How about when we have the right amount of paycheck, the right number of paychecks? Okay? And again, folks, for our method, Ambroise method, we typically need 2 paychecks, okay, to cover our bills, our expenses. When you have 2 paychecks, you okay, generally, okay? Unless you miss a few days or something, but you're generally okay when you have 2 paychecks. Because 2 paychecks, in this particular example, gonna be $2,000, but his expenses only 9,100. You're still gonna have a little bit extra left over, okay? When you have 2 paychecks, you're okay. Okay. Now, how about when you have 3 paychecks for somebody who's on a bi-weekly pay period? Okay. So, how are you gonna deal with this extra paycheck? Because the first 2 paychecks gonna cover the bills, the expenses. What do we then do with the extra paychecks? Okay. For this calendar year, okay. May, he had an extra paycheck. October, he had another extra paycheck. Okay. Depends on your needs, okay? What type of users that you are, okay? You could be aggressive, you could look for greater liquidity, or you could do some form of mix and match. When you want to be aggressive, you're going to attack the standard, the barometer, the measuring stick when you're paying off debt, which is to attack the higher APR account 99% of the time. But there are some times when the higher APR account does not translate to higher interest cost. And that is a lesson that I'm going to cover. My next lesson, that's when I'm going to cover these items. When the higher APR account does not translate to higher interest cost. Okay? So, if the higher APR doesn't translate to higher interest cost, in that case, you're going to attack the highest interest cost account. Because remember, you want to be aggressive. And we're trying to pay off debt. When you're paying off debt, reducing your interest cost is the way to go. Okay? But there are times where we might be doing something that we refer to as event priority on our account, on our method. So in that case, it will be the event priority account, which we already covered from our past case studies. Okay, folks? Extensively. So when you want to be aggressive, you're going to attack either the higher APR account, either the highest interest cost account, or either the event priority account. Okay? In our example, the higher APR account is the personal loan. Okay? But let's assume the remainder balance on the personal loan was like less than $1,000. In that case, you're gonna have an excess. Let's assume the balance in the personal loan was only $600. So you're gonna have an excess of $400. That excess is gonna go to the next highest APR account. Well, the next highest APR account that we have on the board is the credit card. 29%, then 17%. If we had any excess. Okay? That's for somebody who wants to be aggressive. If you're looking for greater liquidity, because you know at some point down the road you're going to have some type of emergency, or you want to cover any future shortages. Okay? In that case, you're looking for greater liquidity, you're going to attack the P-lock. Because between the loan, the credit card, and the P-lock, personal line of credit, offers greater liquidity. Okay? Compared to the credit card. Credit card is liquid, but a lot of times you are limited on the credit card because not every bills, not every expenses can be paid with a credit card instantly. So in that case, you're going to be looking for the P-lock. Okay? So that extra $1,000, you're going to dump it into the P-lock. But let's assume college student did not have a P-lock, because not everybody has a P-lock. Not everybody needs a P-lock to pay off debt. In that case, college student will send the funds, the extra $1,000, to his regular checking account or his regular savings account. That regular checking account, that regular savings account can be the same account where you have your direct deposit going to, or it could be a totally different account. Okay? Depends again, if you could handle it. If you think you're gonna get confused between what money is earmarked for emergency or future shortage, and what money is dedicated for your expenses, you think you might get confused there. In that case, put that extra funds into a separate account. Okay? Do not commingle them. Okay? Put in a separate account if you think you're gonna get confused. Okay? Now we have another type of user with regards to the extra paycheck that we refer to as mix and match. Okay? Mix and match, that's when as the extra paycheck comes in, you might decide to be aggressive. As the extra paycheck comes in, you might decide to look for greater liquidity, or you could do a combination of both. A little bit aggressive by a little bit, looking for greater liquidity by a little bit. Okay? Whether it's 50-50, 60-40, 90-10, 70-30, you decide, okay, what type of user you are, okay, how much you want to go to those accounts. Okay, folks? By the way, America, nobody beside us is teaching you about that kind of stuff. Okay? And I'm giving it to you guys for free. Even though that's just the basic versions, because we do have an intermediate paycheck allocation and an advanced paycheck allocation. Okay? Nobody in America is teaching you about that stuff. Nobody beside us over at Ambroise Method, folks. Over at Ambroise Method, we truly are a different kind of talent by the grace of God. And I apologize for those of you who might be interested in this intermediate paycheck allocation or this advanced paycheck allocation. Folks, unfortunately, I have to reserve these two for financial coaches. Okay? When I start doing training for financial coaches. All right, America. That's it for me today. Again, my name is James Ambroise. I am the author, creator of Ambroise Method 1.0 and Ambroise Method 2.0. Ambroise Method is a revolutionary debt repayment method that offers greater results in terms of reducing interest cost compared to debt snowball, debt avalanche, velocity banking. Thank you, Jesus. Until next time, America. Good morning.